Kia ora, welcome to Central News for Monday the 30th of June. I'm Hilary Entwistle. There are now 5 Waikato schools with confirmed cases of measles. While the spread is still largely associated with Fraser High School, Hamilton Boys High School, Frankton Primary School, Ngā Taiatia Wharekura and Raglan Area School also have confirmed cases. Waikato DHB's Population Health Service has to date confirmed 84 measles cases in Hamilton in recent weeks. 21 of these cases are household contacts or confirmed cases and had already been placed in quarantine before they were unwell. 6 cases have been hospitalised but are now well. Of the 84 cases, only 4 have been immunised with 2 documented doses of the measles, mumps and rubella, that's the MMR vaccine, and 4 cases have received 1 documented dose of MMR. The approaches to Tauranga Harbour could soon have new markers for hazardous reefs and shells, but they won't be cluttering up our views. The markers are electronic and appear only on ship navigational systems. The hazards, such as Astrolabe Reef, where the Rena grounded, will appear as a digital information object on the ship's navigational system, electronic charts and radar. Bay of Plenty Regional Council's Maritime Operations Manager Ruben Fraser says that since the grounding of the Rena in October 2011, the Regional Council has been considering measures to reduce the risk of ships grounding in the region, including virtual aids to navigation. The Waikato Pistons season came to an end in Hamilton last night with a narrow loss, failing to the Wellington Saints 83-82. The Pero Cameron coach Pistons fought to come back from being 24 down in the first quarter to a thrilling final second showdown with Carl Neuer's launch for a 3-pointer, bouncing on the rim twice before falling out to the disappointment of the home crowd at Hamilton Boys High School gym. The Waikato Pistons end their season in 6th place, with Pero Cameron now turning his attention to the Tall Blacks, who meet South Korea in Auckland on July 14th. The National Amateur Bodybuilding Waikato Championships were held in Whangamata on Saturday, with 63 athletes competing in 23 categories. Central News' very own Anne-Marie Case-Miller competed in her first competition, novice figure placing 4th in a tough competition, with Lynn Wright taking out the overall figure trophy after winning in the senior figure 50+ category. A total of 16,620 cannabis plants were seized in the Bay of Plenty during this year's National Police operation that resulted in 100 individuals arrested in the region. The amount seized in the Bay was the second highest amount of the 8 districts that resulted in a total of 105,000 cannabis plants destroyed, 112 firearms seized and 640 suspects arrested nationally. Police believe the true success of this year's National Operation Lucy is not the drugs destroyed, the guns seized or the suspects arrested, but rather the harm that has been prevented from occurring in the community. Police say the arrest of 64 patch gang members or associates during Operation Lucy shows the strong connection between organised crime and the cannabis trade. Now for our region's weather, West Coast, Raglan, there was a gale force warning for today and tonight, but tomorrow's forecast is still looking pretty bad out there. Changing Tuesday afternoon, southwest 20 knots, rising Tuesday evening, southwest 35 knots with very rough seas. High tide in Raglan is 12:31 p.m. East Coast Bay of Plenty, pretty rough there too. Westerly 10 knots, rising to northwest 20 knots in the afternoon, turning westerly in the evening and rising to 25 knots, gusting 35 knots west of Motiti Island. Sea becoming rough in the west in the evening. High tide is at 9:51 a.m. Just ahead, encouraging young women into STEM subjects. Welcome to Central News on TV Central. The government has tried to encourage more people to enter into STEM subjects at tertiary level, that is science, technology, engineering and mathematics. It has been a male-dominated industry previously, so I wanted to find out what it was like for women in this field, and luckily there is just the woman working at the Waikato University who knows the engineering field very well.
I was brought up in the UK and standard state school education. Really liked sciences and loved maths. So in terms of taking that on to university, wanted something that combined those, and discovered metallurgy and materials. So went to university to do that. Really enjoyed it. Really, Imperial College in London was where I went. Great place to be for that area. So that was really inspiring. And then went to my first job working for an electronics company, Plessey. I specialised in electronic materials in my final year, so I was pretty well set up for that, and worked on silicon and gallium arsenide chips for the electronics industry, and interconnect technology related to such devices, as well as things related to infrared thermal imaging, so seeing in the dark. There was, after a while, a bit of uncertainty with the electronics industry in the UK, so I felt a little twitchy and ended up going back to university to do a PhD and sidestepping into the composites area. And soon after that, so I did my PhD in composite materials at Surrey University under a very prestigious supervisor, Mike Bader, well known in the composites industry. Was involved with industries looking at predicting failure of carbon fibre epoxy composites for aerospace, and yes, and from there I not long after came to my job in New Zealand.
You recently presented a lecture on being a material girl in a material world, apart from being an 80s classic. What did you mean by that?
Yes, it sounds like I'm a bit of a Madonna fan, doesn't it? But what I was really trying to do was bring home the importance of materials in our lives, to help people relate to my discipline area. If we think about the impact of materials, then you can think through history of their importance, early human evolution. Historians have even named ages after the materials that were important back then. So, you know, Stone Age, Bronze Age, you know, showing how important materials are. But we've got to the point where we're reliant on so many different materials that have developed more recently, and you know, if we think about our daily lives now, the things we do, the gadgets we use, they're all underpinned by materials technology. And so I made the point in the talk that really it's not just what we're able to achieve, it's our kind of comfort level, and to a large degree our happiness, that's dependent on the materials around us.
Hamilton Youth Council is a group of youth ensuring that young people have a voice on local government. They work closely with the current council on anything that involves youth. They now have a new chairperson, Roxy Dangy.
Well, my name is Roxy Dangy and I was raised here in Hamilton. I went to Hamilton Girls High School, and then after I finished, I went to Waikato University to study a Bachelor of Laws and Bachelor of Arts. Finished there in November 2011, and I started working at McCall Lewis shortly thereafter, and I've been here ever since.
You have been appointed the new chairperson for the Hamilton Youth Council, so what does that role involve?
So the role is more to be the advocate and the voice of the group. I'm also there to chair the meetings when we meet bi-monthly, and also to, on the odd occasion, go to the strategy planning meetings and present to the councillors. Overall, I lean on the panel as such, and we come up with our ideas and our perspectives to take to the council.
What is the relationship between the Youth Council and the Hamilton City Council?
So the Youth Council has been changed in a way this year. We're now the Youth Advisory Panel for the Youth Council. We take our ideas on strategy, bylaws, policies that the council busy working on and present it to the relevant councillors, and they then make their decisions on whilst getting our perspective involved.
How long has that been in place? And this is the first advisory panel?
Yeah, the first panel, yes, advisory panel. They have just recently, we were appointed a few months ago, so those changes have been in effect for a couple of months.
Why do you think it is important that youth have a voice in local government?
I think it definitely does. I think anything that local government does affects everybody, and that's why we need to make sure the councillors know what affects the youth and what the youth's perspective is on the different areas. They have a very robust policy plan in place at the moment, and they're looking for our input on all the different areas. So by us being there as the advisory panel, being able to lend our voice to the issues that are quite important to Hamilton, it's just one way of integrating the youth into the council's thought.
Can you give us an example of some of the strategies that the Youth Council would advise on?
Well, there's a number of working groups going on at the moment. One of our panel members are currently working as part of the Libraries Review Committee. So they meet every so often and discuss ways of improving and enhancing the facilities that we have in the city, and having her on the panel is a good voice for youth. There's also the Elders Advisory Council as well, and they give their perspective as well. So by having the various advisory arms, we are able to enlighten the council as to the different people that make up our city, and that way our perspectives are being represented fairly.
Coming up next, we talk cleaning up our lakes. Welcome back. New Zealand scientists have been studying ways to greater improve the monitoring of water quality in our lakes. BOP Regional Council Chair in Lake Restoration, Professor David Hamilton, is based at the University of Waikato and explained to Anne-Marie recently how the use of technology helped clean up Lake Rotoiti.
Well, some of that was based around some computer modelling that we did, and that showed that if we could divert the inflow, the main inflow through the Ohau Channel into Lake Rotoiti, that we could actually greatly improve the water quality. And in fact, that came to eventuality back in 2008 when a wall was constructed, a $10 million diversion wall to divert the Ohau Channel towards the Kaituna River, bypassing Lake Rotoiti more or less altogether. And the result has been that lake water quality in Rotoiti is better than ever before.
Tell me about the Lake Ecosystem Restoration Program in New Zealand.
Well, what we're trying to do is look at two components. One of them is to be able to potentially control these pest fish. So things like koi carp, being able to either remove them from water bodies or being able to stop them from being transferred and getting into waterways. And that's involved a series of things like trialling sound techniques, sound barriers, trialling physical barriers like bars and rakers to stop them getting into some waterways, and it's looking at poisons as well, potentially. With the algal blooms, what we're looking at is primarily ways to stop the nutrients getting into waterways that would then stimulate algal blooms. So things like denitrification walls, things like certain chemicals that can actually take up and absorb these nutrients, phosphorus in particular, before they cause the blooms.
Hamilton Lake, or Lake Rotorua, is often smelly and doesn't look very clean and green. Is there any hope for this lake?
Well, in fact, Lake Rotorua is probably better in terms of water quality than many of the lakes that are around the Waikato. Many are very strongly affected by excess nutrients. And to me, Rotorua, although it does have some immediate water quality problems, is an example where potentially people can make a difference.
In what way?
Well, by harnessing the sort of collective energy of large numbers of people, and being able to plant riparian areas, being able to implement actions that otherwise, especially in many of our peat lakes, for example, where there might be very few people in the catchment, are just of a scale that you can't do for those lakes.
So Hamilton Lake has the potential to be a model for other lakes.
Potentially. And, you know, it actually had a lot of improvement in water quality until about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe, when it's been, has obviously localised algal bloom problems, but it's not actually all doom and gloom for it at all. And if we can potentially re-establish some of the bottom plants, as well as better restoring some of the riparian areas, then it's a real shining light potentially.
Now, you've devised ways to effectively remove nitrogen from the water before it reaches our waterways. Tell me about that.
It's actually nature. Nature does the job, often very effectively. And what we've done through the last many years in New Zealand has been to remove some of the natural barriers that we're removing nitrogen. For example, taking away wetlands, taking away riparian areas. Those are instances where we had the natural processing ability to be able to absorb and take out some of that nitrogen before it got into the waterways.
The University of Waikato has been working on a range of areas to preserve, protect and improve both the quantity and quality of water in New Zealand lakes. What are a couple of key areas?
Well, one of them is around removal of pest fish. Fish such as koi carp and catfish get into waterways and they stir up sediments, and as a result lead to potentially algal blooms, and so part of that has been around controlling them, both in terms of removing them and in terms of stopping them getting into waterways where they aren't currently, such as the Rotorua lakes, where there are no koi carp or catfish currently, even though they're in many catchments around or nearby. Other things relate to perhaps the use of chemicals, which are able to lock up some of the nutrients that actually get into waterways. And so we're looking at the right applications of those chemicals. In Lake Rotorua, for example, alum has been used. It's a fairly controversial technique, but it has been very successful in improving the water quality of Lake Rotorua. And at a catchment scale, we're looking at things such as detention bunds, where farmers are able to hold back water at times in floods or in high rainfall events, and prevent some of the sediment and some of the nutrients from being transported downstream. So as a result, they're able to maintain greater productivity of their landscape while protecting downstream waterways.
What are a couple of success stories from the LEARNS program?
Well, I guess one of them is Rebecca Evers is a PhD student who's been working with local farmers, particularly to put in wetlands and sedimentation basins nearby to local lakes and stop some of the nutrients from getting in from their land use into those waterways. So that's been perhaps a major success story for us.
Just ahead, running in wool. Welcome back to Central News. When we think of running shoes, we don't necessarily think of them being made out of wool, but that's exactly what Anne-Marie found when she headed to the field days wool running shoes.
It's amazing what you find at the field days. A sheepskin on a running shoe is not what I expected when I was wandering through the pavilion, but you never know what you find at Ag Research, and sure enough, that's what I found. And with me is Andy Cooper, who's the Science Impact Leader at Ag Research. Why is there a sheepskin running on the wall?
That's a really good question. Well, we were approached by a company called 2B, and they were looking for new uses for wool. And we've got a lot of experience in developing new fabrics and utilising the natural benefits of New Zealand wool. And so we worked together, and this is the creation we had. So this is it, the wool runner.
How does a wool runner help or affect an athlete?
Well, the wool runner, obviously being made with New Zealand wool, helps moisture management, especially for the athlete's foot. As we all know, we can get sweaty feet when we're running, and we all have those stinky feet. But the actual wool here helps wick moisture away from the foot, and also has a natural deodorizing effect when you use wool. So this shoe here's had 400 hours of running time, and it smells pretty good.
It does. It smells pretty good. I didn't think I'd be sniffing a shoe at the field days, that's for sure. Do you need to wear socks with it?
Not necessarily, no, and that's a great thing about this shoe. You've basically got the wool which will act as the sock for you, as I said, wicking that moisture away. So these guys used crowdfunding to actually get this product up and running, and so sold off the initial run online, and now are have a production line going with wool runners. It's a great success story.
So the base is a traditional shoe?
Yep, the base is some synthetic, unfortunately. We can't actually produce the base yet in wool. Perhaps we should work on that. But no, it's just the upper and the insole that is actually the wool part. And that's the functionality that we required that's encasing the foot.
Tell me about the sustainability aspect.
Well, obviously being wool, it comes from sheep. Sheep eat grass, sheep grow wool, we shear the wool. It's that simple cycle. And for a lot of discerning buyers of clothing and footwear around the world now, sustainability and understanding the where that fibre or where that product's come from is really important to them. And New Zealand wool, it's got a good story, and it's a great natural fibre.
How popular are the shoes?
Well, they were sold out in the initial run they want, I believe it was something along the line of $30,000, $35,000 they required, and they sold out incredibly quickly online. And this allowed them to then go into a larger production run, so incredibly popular.
It's a fantastic idea, and look, I'd be willing to try it out if it meant that you didn't get those black toenails when you're doing the long distances.
Well, it's not so much the black toenails, it's the actual stinky feet afterwards. So you won't have to leave these outside your back door anymore. You can actually put these away in your shoe cupboard and they won't smell. And they look good too.
For more details, go to agresearch.co.nz. Now for our weather for Tuesday. Hamilton, your Tuesday will have a few showers becoming frequent with northwesterlies. Your expected high is 15 and an overnight low of 6. The rest of the Waikato, a few showers becoming frequent from afternoon, northwesterlies. Paeroa 16 and an overnight low of 5. Matamata 14 and 6. Te Awamutu 15 and 6. Tokoroa 13 and 5. Bay of Plenty, Tauranga showers from afternoon and northwesterly. Your expected high is 16 and an overnight low of 7. Te Puke, fine spells, showers spreading from the west during the afternoon and a northwesterly for you too. 15 and 7 are your expected temperatures. That is Central News for today. Like us on Facebook and let us know if you have any news of your own, or email us at news@tvcentral.co.nz. Join me again tomorrow night for more stories from the Waikato and the Bay of Plenty. I'm Hilary Entwistle. I hope you have a lovely evening.
This has been an Alpha Media production, a division of Television Media Group.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.